My girlfriend abandoned me when I got sick, saying I was a burden. Now that I'm healthy and thriving, she's desperate to return, but it's too late. I thought I had found the one person I could rely on in this world, someone who'd stay by my side through thick and thin. We had built a life together, made promises of forever, and I genuinely believed she meant every word. But life had other plans. It started with headaches and dizziness, symptoms I initially brushed off as stress or exhaustion from work. But soon, it became clear something was seriously wrong. Tests, endless hospital visits, specialists, all pointed to one frightening diagnosis. I was seriously ill, facing months of treatment and an uncertain future. The night I finally broke the news to her, I expected support, comfort, or at the very least, reassurance. Instead, she reacted in a way I never could have predicted. She sighed deeply, annoyance written all over her face, and said coldly, "I can't handle this. I didn't sign up to take care of a burden." Her words cut deep, far deeper than any physical pain I had felt until then. I stared at her, unable to believe the harshness of her words. "You can't be serious," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. She shook her head dismissively. "I'm sorry, but I have my own life to live. You can't honestly expect me to stay and babysit you." Every word stabbed deeper. She gathered her belongings quickly, as though escaping a sinking ship, and left without another glance back. I stood frozen, watching her go, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. That night, I faced the cold reality. I had been abandoned at the exact moment I needed someone the most. The woman I had loved and trusted had walked away, labeling me as nothing more than an inconvenient burden. But what she didn't know was that her abandonment would become my greatest source of strength. The days following her departure were a blur of anguish and confusion. The emptiness she left behind seemed to consume every corner of my life. Her cruel words replayed incessantly in my mind, intensifying the pain of her abandonment. I had expected support and compassion. Instead, I faced the harsh reality of battling my illness completely alone. Initially, I felt paralyzed, unable to eat, sleep, or even think clearly. Friends reached out, but shame and humiliation kept me isolated. The person who knew me best had deemed me unworthy of support. How could I possibly burden anyone else? My health deteriorated rapidly. Treatments became unbearable, each hospital visit amplifying my loneliness. Nurses and doctors offered sympathetic smiles, yet none could fill the emotional void she'd left. Every evening, returning home to a silent apartment was a brutal reminder of my solitude. Financial strain soon followed. Medical bills piled up, overwhelming my depleted savings. I struggled with basic expenses, adding another layer of desperation. Stress and anxiety gripped me relentlessly, forcing me into a dark, seemingly inescapable hole. One night, at my absolute lowest, I sat in silence, contemplating everything I'd lost, not just my health, but my self-worth, my future, and the love I believed I deserved. Tears fell freely as I confronted my darkest fears and deepest vulnerabilities. Yet, within that profound darkness, something shifted. An unexpected surge of defiance stirred within me. I realized that succumbing to despair was exactly what she expected, exactly what she predicted. Was I truly the weak burden she described, or could I prove myself stronger than anyone imagined? That night, amid my pain and sorrow, I made a decision. I would fight. Not just against my illness, but against the shadows of abandonment and rejection that threatened to define me. It wouldn't be easy, and the journey ahead seemed daunting, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. A hope that I could reclaim my life and dignity, piece by painful piece. This newfound resolve didn't erase the hurt immediately, but it became the foundation upon which I would rebuild myself. Slowly, I began to regain control over my thoughts, my feelings, and eventually my life. Her abandonment would no longer define my story. Instead, it would become the fuel propelling me toward a strength I never knew existed. Rebuilding my life wasn't immediate, nor was it easy. It began with small, tentative steps forward. At first, the progress felt minimal. Just getting out of bed each morning was a triumph. Gradually, though, those small victories built upon each other, forming the groundwork for something significant. I started by addressing my health head-on. Physical therapy sessions were grueling, each movement feeling nearly impossible at first. Yet, every session completed strengthened my determination, proving to myself that I was capable of overcoming challenges far greater than I'd ever imagined. Alongside my physical recovery, I tackled my emotional wounds. Therapy became a crucial lifeline, providing a safe space to unravel the tangled emotions of abandonment, rejection, and betrayal. Talking through my experiences wasn't easy, but it slowly freed me from the heavy chains of bitterness and resentment. Financially, I faced harsh realities. With depleted savings and mounting debt, I knew I had to rebuild my finances from scratch. I secured a remote position that allowed flexibility around my treatments. Working late nights, often exhausted and in pain, I persevered, motivated by the promise of independence and stability. Friends who I'd pushed away out of shame began returning to my life, offering genuine support and encouragement. Initially hesitant to accept their help, I soon realized that relying on others wasn't weakness, it was strength. These relationships became pillars of support, reminding me I wasn't alone in my journey. As weeks turned into months, visible improvements appeared. My physical strength returned gradually, my emotional state stabilized, and my financial situation improved steadily. Each step forward rebuilt my shattered confidence, reinforcing the belief that I deserved better than the abandonment I'd experienced. In time, my progress became noticeable to everyone around me. Friends expressed admiration for my resilience. Colleagues praised my dedication and work ethic. But the most significant acknowledgement came from within. I was finally proud of the person I had become. Unexpectedly, during this period of transformation, an opportunity presented itself. A small business venture I'd started as a side project began gaining momentum, offering potential beyond my initial expectations. What started as a modest effort to regain financial stability quickly transformed into a thriving enterprise, opening doors I hadn't even considered before. This newfound success wasn't just about financial security. It represented my ability to turn adversity into opportunity, pain into strength, and rejection into motivation. For the first time since my abandonment, I felt in control of my destiny, no longer defined by someone else's actions. Yet, deep inside, I knew that my journey wasn't merely about proving her wrong. It was about proving myself right. I had always been stronger, more resilient, and more capable than she had ever imagined. Her leaving wasn't the end of my story, it was just the beginning. Armed with this realization, I faced the future with newfound confidence, eager to see what awaited me next. Little did I know, my past wasn't quite done with me yet. Just as I was finally beginning to feel at peace with everything I'd accomplished, my past unexpectedly resurfaced. It started subtly, small notifications popping up on my phone screen, harmless at first glance. Social media likes from her, occasional brief comments on old posts, cautiously testing the waters. Initially, I dismissed it as meaningless gestures, residual guilt perhaps, or simple curiosity about how I was doing without her. But soon, her attempts grew bolder. One evening, after I'd just finished a long day at work, my phone buzzed persistently. There, glowing on the screen, was a message I'd never expected to see again. "Hey, can we talk? I've been thinking a lot about you lately." My initial reaction was a bitter laugh. Thinking back to the cold indifference in her voice when she'd walked away, leaving me alone in my darkest hour, made it clear how hollow her sudden interest felt. Curiosity got the better of me, though, and I agreed to meet. Not for reconciliation, not out of lingering feelings, but simply to understand what could possibly motivate her return after everything she'd said and done. When she arrived at the cafe, her appearance surprised me. She looked tired, worn out, drastically different from the vibrant woman I once knew. There was desperation in her eyes, something I'd never seen before. "You look good," she said hesitantly, breaking the awkward silence that had settled over us. "I've been doing well," I replied calmly. "Better than ever, actually." She nodded slowly, her gaze unable to meet mine directly. "I've been following your progress online. You've come a long way." "No thanks to you," I reminded her gently, yet firmly. Her shoulders stiffened, but she didn't argue. "I deserve that," she whispered after a moment, staring down at her coffee. "I was scared back then. Overwhelmed. I didn't handle things right. I made the biggest mistake of my life walking away from you." Her words stirred something within me, not sympathy or regret, but a stark realization of how far I'd truly come. Her apology no longer held any power over me. I don't expect forgiveness, she continued, her voice breaking slightly. But things haven't been good for me. My life fell apart after I left. Seeing you now, so strong and independent, I realized what a huge mistake I made. I leaned back in my chair, observing her closely. This was the woman who once dismissed me as nothing more than a burden, someone who saw my vulnerability as weakness. Yet, here she was, broken herself, desperate for validation and redemption from the very person she'd abandoned. I took a moment before responding, carefully considering my words. You taught me a painful lesson about self-worth and strength, I finally said. I don't hold anger or bitterness anymore. I've moved on, built something new and meaningful from the ruins you left behind. Her eyes filled with tears, and she reached out instinctively, as though seeking some physical reassurance that would never come. I kept my hands firmly in place, refusing to offer her the comfort she had denied me at my weakest. Can we at least stay in touch? Try to rebuild some kind of friendship? She asked softly, desperation coloring her voice. I shook my head gently, without cruelty, but with unmistakable finality. No, my future doesn't have space for the past. I've found happiness without you, and I don't plan to look backward again. As I stood up to leave, she remained seated, eyes fixed on the empty coffee cup before her. The contrast between us was clear. I had risen above my darkest moment. She was still stuck in hers. Walking out of that cafe felt like shedding the final piece of a painful past. I breathed deeply, feeling lighter than ever before. This wasn't revenge, it was liberation. For the first time, I understood that my greatest victory wasn't rejecting her, but recognizing my own worth and walking away without regret. The door behind me closed softly, symbolizing the permanent end of a painful chapter and the beautiful beginning of the rest of my life. After leaving the cafe that day, life felt distinctly different. A sense of closure wrapped around me, comforting and liberating. The weight I'd unknowingly carried for years lifted from my shoulders, leaving behind a clarity I'd never felt before. Word of my encounter with her spread among friends. Many expressed concern, asking if I was okay or if her unexpected reappearance had stirred old wounds. But, surprisingly, her return had only reinforced my strength, highlighting how much I'd grown and how completely I'd moved beyond the shadows of our past. My business continued thriving, and with renewed focus and passion, I expanded my efforts, diving into projects I'd previously hesitated to tackle. Each success reinforced the confidence and self-worth I'd rebuilt from scratch. Relationships around me deepened, as I became more open and present, genuinely grateful for the people who'd stood by me during my toughest times. One evening, at a celebration for a significant business milestone, surrounded by friends, colleagues, and supporters, I paused to reflect. Looking around at smiling faces, hearing laughter and genuine conversation, I realized something profound. I'd created a life filled with authentic connections, sincere support, and real happiness, entirely on my own terms. That realization brought a deep sense of pride and peace. I had transformed from someone who felt dependent on external validation, defined by someone else's affection or abandonment, into a person secure in their identity and worth. This transformation wasn't just my triumph over illness or abandonment. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Days turned into weeks, then months, and my past remained exactly that, the past. Occasionally, I'd hear through mutual friends that she wasn't doing well, still struggling to rebuild her life. But those updates no longer elicited any emotional response. I had learned to detach, understanding clearly that her journey was no longer intertwined with mine. Eventually, she reached out again, briefly, apologetically, to inform me she was moving away to start fresh somewhere new. I replied kindly but briefly, genuinely wishing her well. There was no animosity, bitterness, or resentment, only genuine neutrality and the quiet acknowledgement of our very separate paths. Reflecting upon my entire journey, from the depths of despair to profound growth and success, I understood the most significant lesson of all. Life's greatest victories come not from seeking revenge or proving others wrong, but from realizing one's inherent strength and building a life true to oneself. Now, whenever challenges arise, and they inevitably do, I face them without fear, knowing that I've conquered far greater battles. My past no longer defines me. Instead, it empowers me, guiding my decisions and strengthening my resolve. Ultimately, the painful chapter she'd authored in my life story became just that, a chapter. A vital part of the narrative, undoubtedly, but not the story's defining point. My narrative was mine alone, shaped by courage, resilience, and an unwavering belief in my worth. As I stood there, among genuine friends and achievements I'd worked so hard to earn, I felt a profound gratitude for the pain, the struggle, and even for her abandonment. Without it, I might never have discovered just how strong I could truly be. In the end, I had found more than mere happiness or success. I had found myself, and that was the true victory. In the quiet moments after that significant milestone celebration, I found myself reflecting deeply on everything that had transpired. Life had handed me the harshest lessons, yet in those lessons lay the keys to my greatest personal growth and fulfillment. The clarity that emerged wasn't fleeting, it was permanent, a defining part of my identity now. Over time, I realized that my ex's abandonment was never truly about me. It was a reflection of her limitations, her fears, and her unwillingness to face difficulty alongside someone she claimed to love. Accepting this truth liberated me from lingering doubts and self-blame, completing my healing process. The life I'd built in the wake of her departure was far richer and more meaningful than what I once had envisioned with her. Genuine friendships, fulfilling work, and inner peace became the cornerstones of my happiness. People often remarked on my resilience, but to me, resilience had simply become a way of life, shaped by necessity and nurtured by determination. Interestingly, the greatest victory was not about proving anything to her or anyone else. It was recognizing my worth independent of external validation. Understanding this shifted my interactions and relationships profoundly. I no longer sought approval or feared rejection. Instead, I embraced connections authentically and fearlessly. One afternoon, as I was organizing some old files, I stumbled upon a photograph from the early days of my illness. In it, my eyes held uncertainty, fear, and vulnerability. Looking at it now, I saw not weakness, but courage. The courage of someone facing immense pain and still moving forward. It was a powerful reminder of my journey, evoking deep gratitude for how far I'd come. As months passed, my story inspired others around me. Friends and acquaintances facing their struggles began reaching out, sharing how my experiences gave them hope and encouragement. I became someone people trusted, someone who could offer genuine empathy, wisdom, and guidance, having walked a difficult path myself. Gradually, I realized my hardships had not just forged my strength, they had also given my life purpose. Sharing my journey, supporting others through similar challenges, became deeply fulfilling. Each interaction reinforced that what I'd once considered the darkest chapter of my life had, in fact, prepared me to bring light into others' darkness. Eventually, news reached me that my ex had found stability elsewhere, slowly rebuilding her life. Hearing this evoked no bitterness or resentment, only a quiet wish for her peace. I understood profoundly that true healing meant wishing genuine happiness even for those who had caused pain. Today, standing firmly in the present, looking confidently toward the future, I appreciate every moment, good and bad, that shaped my path. The clarity, wisdom, and strength I've gained have become the foundation upon which I continue building a meaningful, joyous life. I now understand clearly that my true victory wasn't about overcoming abandonment or illness. It was in discovering and embracing my authentic self. That realization, that unshakable sense of identity and purpose, remains my most significant achievement. As I look forward, embracing new possibilities and challenges, I carry the certainty that whatever comes next, I have the strength, resilience, and self-belief necessary to thrive. In the end, my greatest reward was never success, recognition, or validation. It was the profound, empowering knowledge that I am, and always have been, enough.